The contents of the lab report are meant for educational purposes only and are not meant to be misconstrued as medical diagnosis or treatment advice.
Today, on the lab report, amino acids.
I do not sound
Yes,
like
you do.
that. It's
Yes, you do.
not what I sound like.
The world of medicine can be challenging. Clinicians and patients are always looking for more options, more effective treatments, and in the end, more answers. Functional and integrative medicine focuses on addressing root causes of disease. Here at Genova Diagnostics, we've watched this field evolve and grow for over 35 years. We've not only adapted, we've led. Join us as we talk about functional medicine, laboratory testing, and optimizing health. Welcome to the Lab Report. Changed it up. Confused you a little bit there.
Yeah, it threw me off for sure. I think we need to restart the episode, maybe.
Yeah, because I think you said porpoises in the disclaimer.
Hello!
Hi, Michael Chapman.
Hi, Patti Devers. How goes it today?
It's going great. Welcome to the Lab Report.
Welcome, one and all, to this podcast brought to you by Genova Diagnostics, where we talk about functional medicine, specialty lab testing, integrative therapeutics, and today, protein and amino acids.
That's right. And if you are new to this podcast, welcome.
Welcome.
And if you're returning, thank you.
Hey, good to see you.
And you should probably go to iTunes or Spotify and subscribe, rate, review, download, all of those things that we
Do
say every
those
time.
things. That would really help us out. And if you have more feedback to give, you can always send that to podcast@gdx.net. That's the email that you can reach us. You can submit your questions of the day or just your feelings, your general feelings.
Yeah, those emails are fun to read. I love them.
You know, Patti, it's been a while since we heard from Oliver. I think, he's got a few things to say, I believe. And for those who might not be familiar, maybe it's one of your first times listening to it. Oliver is, he works for Genova Diagnostics. He works for Genova Europe, actually.
That's right.
Over in London. And we had him on for a little bit, and he gave us some really nice comments. And, maybe right now he's wondering something like...
Chappers, what are we talking about today?
Right, exactly. Or like...
What are you on about?
Maybe why are you even talking about this? And, occasionally he'll say something like...
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. So with respect to his first question...
Chappers, what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about protein and more specifically amino acids.
Ah, okay. That's a good topic. And there's actually, interestingly, a lot of debate out there around protein these days.
There is.
So let's get into it. And as you said, you can't talk about protein without talking about amino acids, right?
That's right. And, we talked in several episodes about the macronutrients of our diet, things like proteins and fats and carbohydrates. And so if we're going to zero in on protein, let's talk about how protein is actually made up of amino acids.
Yeah, that at the end of the day is what we're really looking for out of protein, right? Where our body takes the protein from our diet, which can come from plant foods or animal products. Just about everything is going to have, just about any food product is going to have some protein in it. And protein is then digested by your GI tract and broken down into, and it releases these individual amino acids.
And then amino acids can be used in so many different processes in your body, but they can also link together using these little things called peptide bonds.
Yeah. So it's like Legos.
It is.
Here we go, right?
Oh, another Michael Chapman metaphor.
You've got this big structure that you don't eat Legos, but I mean, just to go with me here for a second. Maybe this isn't.
Although we don't know you very well. But.
But your body breaks these down into the little individual building blocks so that it can then build other things out of these little building blocks. And so that's kind of what is happening when it comes to protein and amino acids.
Right. And so when you link a few amino acids together, they're called peptides. And so there can be like 2, 10, 100. So it's an amino acid, then a dipeptide, oligopeptide, polypeptide.
Yeah. And you were just talking about bigger and bigger structures, right? So you've got a peptide, like you said, 2 peptides is a dipeptide. Oligopeptide has several peptides. And then put all that together, and essentially you've got a protein.
Right. And, I never actually thought about this until you and I were discussing this, that what's the difference between a peptide, like a polypeptide, and a protein? Because isn't a protein really just stringing together amino acids?
Right. And I don't know the answer to this. Ultimately, I tend to think of protein being a little bit of a loose term, so that like peptides, dipeptides are proteins, are a form of protein. I don't know if there's any sort of like scientific distinction. Maybe that's something we could Google.
Yeah, let's Google it.
Oh, man. I'm excited to find out this answer. It's taking a minute. Man, that's a lot of typing you have over there. I mean, protein is 7 letters.
Yeah, even though protein's only 7 letters, as is peptide, there's all the other words around it, like what's the difference between, etc.
Oh, okay.
And
That makes sense.
as it turns out, you are correct. It's a fairly loose term because there's a lot of debate about exactly what constitutes a protein. But I think people reserve the word protein for the really, really long chains of amino acids. Like some people say 50, some people say 100. But either way, I think in the end of the day, it's usually a whole lot of amino acids strung together that make a protein.
And at the end of the day, I was right.
You're the best, Michael Chapman. Okay.
Okay, so let's go here. We just uncovered that amino acids are the backbone of protein.
Right.
And one of the big reasons why we should be eating protein is to deliver amino acids to our body.
Correct.
How much protein?
Well, you mentioned earlier that protein's in just about all of our food, right?
Yeah, that's why they're called macronutrients, because there's carbs, fat, and protein in certain different percentages in just about all foods.
Right. But this is also up for some debate, and I'm going to say it depends, because I know you love that answer in functional medicine. It depends. Because if you go by like the recommended daily intake, by the USDA, they often say things like 0.8 grams per kilogram.
0.8 grams per kilogram. I've heard that number before.
Okay, but that's really just to maintain, normal bodily functions, and it doesn't take into account the fact that some people have illnesses that increase their protein demand, or they exercise. Clearly, you're going to move through the day, so you're going to probably need more than that.
Yeah, sure. Everyone's metabolic demand is going to be different, and especially I'm assuming the different amount of muscle mass that you have is going to change how much protein that you need. So there's a little bit of arbitrariness to this 0.8 number. Where'd the 0.8 come from? Do we know?
USDA.
Okay.
I think it's just to prevent nitrogen loss.
It's like the RDA.
Basically, basic, yeah.
It's the RDA.
Yeah.
And so if we accept that, which there's some debate out there whether we should accept that, then I don't know kilograms. So
a kilogram?
So that's a little bit unhelpful. So let's just say if somebody is 170 some pounds,
okay,
how many grams does that translate to?
Well, I don't have a calculator, but if I take, let's say 175,
do I need to play the
divided by
music
2.2,
again?
that's probably like 80 kilograms, and then 80 kilograms times 0.8, that's probably like 64 grams.
Oh, that worked out well.
Nice work, sir.
Okay, so 64 grams. That's quite a bit, actually, it seems.
And that's just a baseline. That's not even taking into account your metabolic rate.
And that's like a low-end cut point. Like
Right.
you might need quite a bit more than that. You probably don't want less than that,
Agreed.
is what you're saying. So
That's right.
let's go through and maybe talk about this a little bit, because I think at the end of the day, as a clinician, one of the biggest things I'm trying to assess for is somebody getting adequate protein in their diet. And so, sure, there's going to be a few people out there where I'm like, well, you might be over consuming protein, or, is this burdening your liver, kidneys, something like that. But many more people I'm going to be concerned about protein deficiency in their diet.
Far more common than you realize, because to your bigger point, how do you translate 64 grams to food?
Right.
Right?
Right. So let's start with the easy things like our animal skeletal muscle, our meats.
Yeah. And I would say animal protein in general will often have a lot more protein than plants.
Of course.
But
of course,
there's
higher
protein in both.
density,
Right.
and we'll get into this later, but higher availability, higher bioavailability of that protein as well. So something like a chicken breast, right? So that's easy to visualize. How much protein is in like a chicken breast?
Approximately 40.
40 grams of protein. So that's pretty good. It
Fairly
sounds.
good.
I mean, a chicken breast is pretty. That's a lot of meat.
It
but
is, yeah.
What about an egg?
Well, an egg is not as much.
Okay.
Usually like 6.
Okay. So if you had like a chicken breast and 2 eggs for breakfast,
Oh, yeah. you're getting close.
You're getting close to what you need for your day. But that's...
It's still not there.
Yeah,
and
now you got to
only
fill
baseline,
in.
Right.
You got to fill in with other stuff. So you can start to see where even people who are having meat in their diet, like are you getting that every single day? Are you eating that every single day? So it's a big question mark. And so that leads to the next question of like, what if you're not eating animal foods?
Right.
Then what sort of proteins are we looking for here?
And we were talking about how animal meats are far more nutrient dense with protein, but there's protein in plants.
Yes.
Right? And so you think about a vegetarian or vegan diet. What's the most common thing they eat is soy. Or tofu.
Tofu, yeah, like firm tofu is probably going to be highest in protein content. And so that would be a good staple. How much is in tofu as compared to the chicken breast?
Well, like a cup of tofu
Yeah.
has 20 grams of protein. So not as much.
It's
not bad.
Yeah, so a cup is about half of a chicken breast. Okay, so, but not bad.
Right.
But you're still talking about eating tofu every single day. And maybe, that's something that vegetarians are, or maybe they aren't doing. If you're not eating tofu, I think you start running into some risks because a lot of the other foods are going to be much lower in protein as compared to the tofu. I think second on the list is like lentils,
right? Beans,
and then falls your dairy. So then again, say what you will about dairy and whether you have any particular food issues, some sensitivity, some allergies to dairy, stuff like that. But those are your big sources of protein when it comes to a vegetarian or vegan diet. You lose the dairy as well. So,
and I think the bigger point is that you really have to pay attention because a lot of us aren't getting enough protein, and it's not only what we're eating and the amounts. There are other factors, and you brought up digestibility earlier.
Yeah. So this is a whole other factor where there's what's called the PDCAS score, and this helps to determine the digestibility, meaning how accessible that protein is to your body. Can you actually break down the protein and get the amino acids out of it? And it turns out that animal sources of protein have a much higher score compared to a lot of vegetable sources of protein. Things like wheat have a really low score, meaning the protein that's in them is really not bioavailable. It's not accessible to any like major degree. So that's something to take into consideration also.
And the other piece of that is how you prepare them.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes in the preparation you can either increase or decrease that digestibility.
Right.
And the other piece of that PDCAS score is that they're looking at how many amino acids are in any one source of protein.
The balance of the amino acids.
They are, yeah. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And so we're agreeing now that maybe not everyone's getting as much protein as they need.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons clinically that I'll sometimes, especially if somebody is complaining about fatigue and I'm questioning their diet in any sort of way, I'll immediately do a protein diary, have them track their grams of protein that they ate throughout the course of one day for, say, like a week or two. And I can't tell you how often I've seen that come back under what we want.
Correct.
So that's a big thing.
Correct. And it really comes down to that point that we started this with, is when you eat protein, it digests and breaks down into these amino acids. And if you can consider all the places amino acids are needed, it's the building blocks of everything in our body. So they feed the Krebs cycle for energy.
They form structures,
right,
like your muscle, like skin, hair, nails, cartilage. They're the structural component of that.
Right. They're also precursors for neurotransmitters. And so you think about all these mood disorders and how much of this is protein and amino acid deficiency?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that segues right into us talking more about the individual amino acids a little bit.
So let's just start with a broad topic of there are 20 amino acids.
And some might say there are secret amino acids,
What?
21 and 22. Yeah, it's
All
true.
right. Now you're making stuff up.
Nope, that's truth.
All
that's
right.
according to Wikipedia.
Well, let's get into that.
The source of all truth.
But to break that down further, we know that there are two different kinds. There's essential.
Yes.
And then there's non-essential. And what do we mean by those terms, Michael Chapman?
When we're talking about essential amino acids, these are amino acids that you can only get through your diet. They have to be obtained through your diet. You can't make them. Your body can't synthesize them. So it's entirely dependent upon your diet to make sure that you're getting these. Non-essential, on the flip side, are things that your body can make. And oftentimes they are made from the essential amino acids or maybe these sort of protein intermediates. But that's the difference between the essentials and the non-essential amino acids. It's kind of similar to the fatty acids where there's a couple essential fatty acids and the rest your body can synthesize.
Right. And sometimes people further break that down into things like conditional amino acids, which are in higher demand and made and used only under certain conditions, like various illnesses, et cetera, or various stressors on the body.
Yeah, amino acids that can be made, but there's a question mark as like, does the body regularly make them to an adequate level?
Okay, so we know that there's a whole slew of varying amino acids, and I'm not sure we can cover every single one of them on this show. It would be a really, really long episode.
It would be. And to tell you the truth, there's some amino acids out there that they're just not as exciting as the others. I'm sorry,
You're
guys.
You're alienating other amino acids.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm just telling it how it is, and I'm just saying, proline, step your game up.
Wow. Some really strong feelings about amino acids.
I mean, that's actually not true. Because
proline's important.
Proline is really important to cartilage.
Yeah. How dare you, sir?
Maybe I should have picked a different one.
Well, I think this might be...
Glutamic acid. I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Aspartic acid. Yeah. That being said, remember when we did this with minerals and we went around to the team and just kind of called them off the cuff and asked them what their favorite mineral was? We can probably do that with amino acids.
I love that. I think that's a great idea. We haven't done that for a while. We haven't talked to the team members.
Yeah.
Do you think we should warn them?
No.
Oh.
As you know, we talk on the phone all day long to clinicians, and so it's not uncommon for us to have a lot of information at the ready. So let's surprise them.
I guess that's why we call it off the cuff.
That's right.
Okay, who are we going to call first?
Why don't we call Dr. Lenore Powell?
Love it.
Naturopathic genius.
Yep, love it.
Let's call her.
Okay. Hello, Lenore.
Hi, Lenore.
Michael and Patti from the Lab Report.
Hello, hello. How are y'all doing today?
We're great.
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thanks for letting us bother you and interrupt your day. A question. We're going around asking team members we're talking about amino acids. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite amino acid?
And why?
The answer is no. I do not have one favorite amino acid. I actually like 3 amino acids.
Whoa.
I'm actually going to have to I'm going to have to vote for the branched chain amino acids. As being a prior athlete, those have to be my favorite aminos, just with the several benefits that we have seen in literature regarding muscles and the growth of muscles and decreasing the soreness of muscles and reducing exercise fatigue and muscle wasting. The 3 branched chain amino acids have to be my favorite. And those would be things like leucine, isoleucine, and valine.
I love that.
And yeah, there's like a lot of places where you can get it from. So what I love is that you can get it from animal products, but you can also get it from plant sources like nuts and seeds. And so when we look at testing and things like that, if I ever see that somebody is deficient in branched chain amino acids, it's either because they exercise a lot, which is fine, nothing wrong with it, but you have to replace it.
Yeah.
Because it's used, again, for helping to really help build muscles.
Yeah.
But also I see it deficient in people who have digestive issues.
Yeah.
Because, again, if it's coming from animal products and nuts and seeds, usually vegan vegetarians aren't low in these 3 amino acids in my experience. So it's usually kind of like I exercise a lot and I'm using a lot of it. Or it could also be that your patient has digestive issues. But those tend to be those 3 amino acids that I really like. I mean, they say that it can account for like 35% of your proteins that's needed for your muscles. So they are quite important, especially when it comes to just athletics and having that really nice defined muscular tone and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of athletes actually just supplement with branched chain amino acids.
Just by themselves. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the other thing I think about with branched chain amino acids is that clinically, when they're elevated, that's been associated with other metabolic concerns. So you get a totally different window when they're high. So they really can be a great clinical tool to see whether somebody needs additional support or whether there might be some metabolic issues.
Perfect, exactly. And that's why, again, when we look at testing and when I start to see that the metabolites of your branched chain amino acids in organic acid testing, when those are high, like your alpha-keto acids, sometimes I like to ask about, well, when's the last time you got a fasting insulin or fasting glucose level for your patients? Because sometimes that's one of the things that it might kind of start to hint us toward when we have some of those metabolites on the higher side. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I let you guys in on a really quick secret?
Yeah.
So with athletes, they say it's really important, the branched chain amino acids for muscle growth and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But did you know they actually work in synergy better for making muscles than just like with other proteins than just taking the branched chains alone?
So in essence, eating like a good protein-rich
The
diet.
whey protein isolate, something like that. That's well balanced.
Perfect.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So just taking the branched chain amino acids doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have higher muscle growth, you know?
Right.
So just taking them with other amino acids can be, that's probably the best option that you have if you really want to have that beautiful muscle definition look.
Perfect.
I love it. Well, Lenore, as always, you're just a wealth of amazing information. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for talking to us about the branched chain amino acids and spending your time with us.
Thank you, Lenore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, girl. All right. So that was a bunch of amazing information from Lenore.
That was fantastic.
So-
as always.
I know, right? Well,
As always.
Well, the whole team is amazing. So who should
Yeah.
we call next for more great information?
I think we should call Dr. Stephen Goldman,
Let's
doctor
do
of
it.
chiropractic
That's
medicine,
right.
and just general genius as well.
Get him.
Hello.
Hi, Stephen.
Coleman here.
Hi, it's Patty and Michael from the podcast.
Dr. Goldman, how are you?
Oh my goodness, it's the podcast.
Again,
Wow.
you're
What a pleasant surprise.
such an amazing recurrent character on our show. But today we're actually doing a podcast episode on amino acids, and we thought it might be fun just to do off the cuff and call the team members and see, what's your favorite amino acid?
I know we're all different, so maybe we all have different favorite amino acids.
Well, first of all, what does it say about us that we actually have favorite amino acids?
It says a lot.
We're
I can't
awesome.
think of another group that would answer that question without like a puzzled look on their faces. But we are what we are, and
Right.
we are nerds. So, if you're asking me that question, I have a real affinity for tyrosine.
Good one.
I love tyrosine. Tyrosine actually, it's kind of cheesy. It's from cheese, and tyro actually is Greek for cheese.
I
So
didn't know that.
how can't you love that?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yes, and the thing about tyrosine reminds me of my days in Little League when I was a utility infielder. And I love utility infielders because they do all the little things to help everybody else really shine. And tyrosine's like that. Because, tyrosine it comes from phenylalanine. So you got to actually help it along to make it happen. These 3 steps. And it's really responsible for a few things. Number one, it does get iodine. The thyroid gives it iodine, and 4 of those around tyrosine make thyroxine.
Huh.
So right away, you're making thyroxine,
Right.
and the thyroid is pretty particular, so that it would give its iodine to this guy. It's pretty amazing. And as an infielder, utility infielder, it's actually going to give it away. It's going to take those 4 iodines and get rid of one right away and make T3, which is an even stronger
It's like a double play.
thyroid hormone. You gotta love that. And if things get out of control, it'll lose another one and make a T2 and activate it. So it's always ready to sacrifice for the team. And it makes catecholamines. Tyrosine makes dopamine and makes epinephrine and norepinephrine. So it really helps you feel better. People who take tyrosine, very often it helps with stress load. It helps with norepinephrine production that really keeps stress lower. So it's helping you make thyroxine, T3. It's making dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and it's cheesy. You gotta love that.
Excellent.
That is
answer.
excellent. Well,
Superb as always.
Well, let me ask you this, Stephen. What position did you play in Little League?
I, as a left-hander, played a lot of first base and some center field.
Got it.
Got it.
And my favorite player just passed, Lou Brock. So a shout out to Lou Brock from the St. Louis Cardinals, one of the all-time greats.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And a shout out to tyrosine. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much for letting us use your time.
Always a pleasure. And remember, stay off my lawn. Bye now.
Bye, Stephen.
Well, That was excellent. As
It's always excellent. Steven's the best.
Stay off my lawn. So who should we contact next?
Well, there's an old friend of the show that we haven't spoken to quite a while, Dr. Christine Stubbe,
Yes.
the queen of all things poop and bugs.
Dr. Stubbe.
I wonder if she's going to have an opinion on amino acids.
Oh, I think she will.
Yeah?
Knowing Stubbe, I think we all have
Really?
opinions on amino
Yeah,
acids.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's try calling her.
Hello.
Hi, Christine.
Stubbe.
Dr. Stubbe, it's Michael and Patti from the lab report.
Oh, I love hearing from you guys.
Aw.
We love hearing
It
from you
means
too.
we're getting ready to have fun.
That's
That's
right.
right. And we're about to ask a question that we've gone around and talked to Lenore and Stephen so far. We've asked them this question. Hopefully that you'll have a great answer for
She
this.
will, of course.
Yeah,
Come
I'm
on.
Sure. So the question is, do you have a favorite amino acid and why?
Ooh. Yes, in fact, I do have a favorite amino acid.
Wow.
Which one?
It's tryptophan.
Tryptophan.
Nice.
Oh, phenol rings. I understand.
You know, everyone has heard of this one because it's in Turkey and we think about Thanksgiving. whenever
Yeah.
Someone says tryptophan.
That's right.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes everybody sleepy.
Well, why do you like it? Tell us about it.
I like it because it goes on to form the neurotransmitter serotonin.
Mhm.
And serotonin, it has to do with our mood and basically well-being and happiness and positive mood. So who wouldn't want an amino acid to
Yeah.
make serotonin?
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, for sure.
That's happy.
And the other thing is, it then further goes on to make melatonin, which is why we think about it as far as making people sleepy when you have high amounts of
See?
tryptophan.
So you're right. That's a good
That's
one,
right.
Christine. You picked
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for indulging our conversation where we're asking people about amino acids. It's a little specific, I know.
Right. Anytime.
You're the best, Christine.
Take care now.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You know, the other thing about tryptophan is that it can also go down a different pathway called the kynurenine
Yes,
pathway.
it can.
And that ultimately creates NAD, which, as we all know, NAD is like super important for so many different processes in the body. The balance
Yeah.
between NAD and ADH is like, it's what's looked at in a lot of longevity aspects, relates to antioxidant status. It's really important. So
Yeah, and I think about when we talked about organic acids, we talked about the kynurenine pathway and quinolinic acid and inflammation. So you're right. That's a good one.
yeah. Okay.
What's your favorite, Michael?
My favorite amino acid is actually the most simple, the most basic,
What?
the bare bones glycine.
Good one.
Glycine is this really important amino acid that plays a role in so many different pathways. It tends to be a little bit of a balancer with serine, so it tends to have this relationship where it swaps methyl groups. It's also used in detoxification with glycination. So that's critically important. Actually, the GNMT is a detoxification pathway as well. So that's really interesting. You know, the other thing is that from a clinical perspective, we tend to use glycine as helping with sleep, anxiety, and I think like this kind of like type A personality sort of concern over
Why are you
work,
looking at me?
over stress. I'm just saying you might consider
need
glycine
glycine?
at some point, but because the way that it works on NMDA receptors and has a glutamate antagonist, so that is really, really important as well, and that's why it works for those conditions and for overall sleep quality. It's great. And lastly, the thing I love about it is it tastes great.
Oh, just because it's sugary?
It tastes
Glycerin.
sugary. Yeah, it tastes sweet.
Got it.
Has a sweet taste to it. So from a clinical perspective, it's really nice intervention. You don't get a lot of pushback from a palate perspective. So yeah. how's
That's a
that
good
for-
one.
Yeah. How about you?
I
What's
like
your
that one.
favorite amino acid?
Well, what comes to mind is taurine.
Okay.
And why it comes to mind is that a lot of people drink energy drinks.
Sure.
Right? So you think of Red Bull.
Uh-huh.
Red Bull has tons of taurine in it.
Does.
You think of taurine, Taurus, like a bull.
Yeah.
That's where the name comes from.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not only an energy drink.
How
but
clever.
I know, right? Some people, you probably didn't even know that.
I did
You're just
not know
drinking
that.
taurine drinks. But
I'm not doing
I know,
that,
but
but-
really it's also in other things like dairy and turkey and shellfish, blah, blah, blah. But it's important in so many important metabolic processes. It's helpful in the brain, kind of similar to what you're talking about. It can also be calming. It's also profoundly beneficial in cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of research out there about it being helpful for ischemic reperfusion. It's
Yeah.
also it's helpful in bile acid conjugation, deconjugation in the liver. It's also important in your eyes.
Yeah.
So they often put it in breast milk supplementations for babies because babies don't have enough of it and they're trying to develop their retina and such. So taurine's just got a lot of really interesting things. Plus, it's kind of quirky and it's in Red Bull.
I like that.
Taurus, yeah.
I like that. I like that it has all these different aspects with respect to cardiovascular disease, like you said, the health of the eyes.
Right.
But then it also plays a role in energy and energy maintenance.
That's right.
So that's really cool. Yeah, I like that one too. Does it taste good?
Oh, depends on how you're drinking it. Maybe you don't like Red Bull. Maybe you like turkey instead or shellfish. In which case, yep. Most people don't supplement taurine because you could just get it in so many places.
Right. And not that we're necessarily endorsing the energy drink perspective.
That's
of that.
right.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, I just want to make sure there.
Well, we have just hit a smattering of some of these amino acids, but in essence, we've only just scratched the surface because there's 20 plus.
22.
What are the secret hidden ones? You
All
never
right.
tell me.
All right.
And so, first and foremost, we know that there's essentials, there's not essentials, there's conditional, there's limiting. What in the world are you talking about of two hidden, quote unquote, secretive amino
There
acids?
is a compound referred to as selenocysteine that is considered the 21st amino acid. And then there's the 22nd amino acid, which is pyrrolysine.
Wow.
And so those are considered non-essentials, but they because of their structure, they're very, very similar to amino acids and are therefore being called these sort of additional amino acids, which is interesting.
Yeah. And you think about, we just hit on a couple and we showed you how significant they are and how important they are in a lot of biological processes. And you and I started this episode by talking about how important protein intake is.
Yeah.
And we talked about how a lot of people are a little bit more insufficient than they thought.
Yeah.
Which makes the question then, well, if everyone's got a little bit of insufficiency, how are we going to know where we should be concerned when we know that these feed specific processes?
You said question. Does that mean that's the question of the day?
No, this is just a question in general.
Well, I think a good way to go about doing that is to just test. You can test for amino acids and see whether somebody's actually has amino acid sufficiency or whether there's an imbalance there or whether they need some support. So that would be, I think, a nice scientific method for determining amino acid sufficiency and whether somebody's getting enough in their diet.
Well, what are some of the ways we test amino acids here? What are some of the profiles that you can find amino acids on?
So I think about the NutriVal profile, the Metabolomics Plus profile. There's also amino acid standalone profiles, and you can get those on the NutriVal. You can look at amino acids either in the plasma or first morning void, depending on what you're angling for, what you're interested in looking at.
Yeah. So if you want to answer these questions definitively, get the tests.
Yeah. And if you want to hear the jingle, then submit a question of the day because we got one coming up right now.
Do we? It's the question of the day. It's the question of the day.
I'm glad I shortened that.
That wasn't short.
Yeah, no.
You have upped your game though in the jingle department.
Yeah?
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks to GarageBand and all the ridiculous plugins that they have that sort of sound like actual plugins, but not really.
Well, it works. Well, the question of the day is this, Michael Chapman. Often when we are reviewing results, we don't really pick out one or two amino acids. We're looking at the patterns.
Yeah.
And so when I see amino acids all following a particular pattern, we ascribe specific meanings to it. So what does it mean when most of them are really, really high? And then alternatively, what does it mean when most of them are really, really low?
When they're really, really high, usually that's going to indicate a high protein diet because somebody's doing something to where they're just, they're consuming more protein and it's showing up in the plasma. It's could be coming from catabolism, but less likely. I think if the body's in a catabolic state, you're not going to see free amino acids floating around at a higher clip in the plasma or in the serum. So I would tend to think high protein intake, with them all being high, with them all being low. Similar, you could think it could be protein deficiency. It could be somebody's just not eating enough protein. And I tend to wonder a little bit about what the quality of the diet is that could be contributing to that. And from there, I look at the dietary peptide-related markers to give me more insight. So the way dietary peptide-related markers work is those tell me about what type of diet somebody's consuming, and specifically if they have a diet that's higher in animal products, because these are breakdown products of animal foods. So I can look at that, and if I see that those dietary peptide markers are low, then they probably don't have a very high intake of animal foods, and that might be part of what's contributing to the actual low levels of the amino acids themselves.
Well, what about when the dietary peptides are high, but the amino acids are low?
It's a great question. So that tends to be more suspicious around maldigestion or malabsorption of the protein, because we're seeing the actual animal intake show up with that dietary peptide related marker be high, but still low amino acids. Makes me wonder they haven't broken those animal proteins down fully into their component amino acids. And that's why the amino acids are still low. So you could think about digestive enzyme support, HCl support, stuff like that.
Or a stool profile.
Yeah. Run a gut test.
Yeah, just to kind of get a feel. The other thing I think about sometimes with patterns of low and high is that there are vitamin and minerals needed to utilize some of these things peripherally. So that can also contribute sometimes.
Yeah, and the pattern I tend to think about there is when the essential amino acids look normal, but the non-essentials start to look a little bit low.
Right.
Because remember, you convert the essentials into non-essentials, and that requires cofactors. So that might be one thing I'm looking for.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Why don't you say you're welcome?
It's more efficient to just say welcome.
Oh.
Plus, I'm not really sure what you're welcome means anyway.
I never thought about that, actually.
Next time on the Lab Report, Drew Manning.
Super famous guy from Fit to Fat to Fit.
And now, Fit to Fat to 40.
Wait, what?
We'll ask him about it.
What?
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Lab Report. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to our podcast, rate us, and leave us a review. To learn more about Genova Diagnostics, visit our website at gdx.net. There you'll find information on specific testing, educational resources, and how to connect with our show. Call us at 1-800-522-4762 or email us at podcast@gdx.net.
You ever had parsnips?
Probably.
Probably.
Not on purpose.
What?
I'm sure it's been in things.
You
Go to a
have not
restaurant,
even
there's
heard-
parsnips.
You're judging the parsnip and you've
No,
never even had one.
I've never actively sought one out, I guess is the best way to say that.
Why are you hating on the parsnip?
I'm not.
You've never
I'm
even sought
apathetic,
one out.
which is actually worse.
They're actually pretty yummy.
Okay.
You should try one.
I probably have.